So the second part here is the open farm, which by open farm, I mean in the open world, you want to be killing as many minions as possible, as fast as possible. So that's going to be AoE oriented build. You don't care about defense here because you'll be in a groups more often. Rarely going to feel like threatened by any of the enemies in the open world. You just want to kill them as fast as possible. And if you're in Abyssal Dungeon, then some of the enemies there are a bit tougher, so it's going to take a bit more time. That's why you want to make sure that you have as much damage as possible. For this build, the passives are very similar with two small exceptions. So obviously this time we want to use Spectrum of Agony. This works the same way for Provoking Roar or Cleaving Roar. So usually the builds use Moral Boost, but if I think about it, there are not many cases where I would have Collision. The only case you would be using Collision if you use Strategic Rush, which has Collision Push. But anything else that actually does that is Fierce Clash, and nobody actually using that. And now if you can see that I actually removed Strategic Rush, to me it's more of a PvP skill. It doesn't do much damage. It does push enemies and it has some CC, but it's not that relevant in a lot of the PvE situations. It is a mobility skill at the same time, but it's again not super important. So I changed a couple of things. That's why Moral Boost isn't really that relevant because you can't really proc the cooldown reduction that many times. So instead of that, I kept the other things. Again, we got Skillful Evasion here. You're not going to get the bonus against provoke targets because when using Provoking Roar, we're using Cleaving Roar. You still get the other bonus evasion against magic and ranged attacks. And with the Greatsword skills, I would just use Raging Frenzy, obviously. Anything that's increasing your stats based on number of enemies because you'll be surrounded by many enemies, so that would be great. And then here I was using this Victor's Morale for extra mana recovery, so that's a bit questionable whether it's gonna work just as good. But now we got extra mana recovery from evasion anyway, because before that we were not using Skillful Evasion. You can just increase the level of this one as well to make sure that you evade more often. And so the main big damage difference here, what I believe is gonna do something, if I'm correct, but this depends on stats as well, is Cold Warrior. Now, if you can see, this build actually uses Stunning Blow, and they did a really good design here by making the icon very similar. So what that would say, hey, you should probably use both of these skills together, right? So I'll explain to you why I put this in a PvE build, which a lot of people think, hey, this is supposed to be for PvP because it does stun, it's crowd control, doesn't do a lot of damage, and it's not that relevant. It's not even AoE attack, by the way. But I'll explain to you why this is supposedly should be good on bosses as well, even for single targets if you want, but also like there is not much space for this one in the tank build, but you can use it on open world farm or solo bosses. I'm gonna get to that later. Heavy attack chance right now, this is blue 1, so we're gonna get like 10 levels more, I think, and this increased by like 18 points. No, it's 12 points per level, so that's gonna be like another 120 points. So this should get close to 300 heavy attack chance, which is almost double than what we got now. But also it does increase your crit hit chance by 105, but that doesn't increase by level. So it's going to be flat 105 crit chance, which is good on its own anyway. But why with the heavy attack chance is going to be increased only against shocked or stunned targets. So unless you have any way to shock or stun them, this bonus is not going to be applied. So it's kind of useless. If you're in a group, obviously others can also apply the shock or stun effect. But as a solo player, if you're playing on solo boss, that's not going to work unless you have it. And that's why you want to use Stunning Blow, basically. It does very small damage anyway, but what is really important, it has 80% chance to stun target for 2.3 seconds. 80% chance is not 100, so that's not going to work all the time. Keep that in mind. And there isn't really any way to increase that except for your own stats. And if you can check our builds, with the current setup, actually we have a lot of stun chance. If you check here, stun chance 478. I mean, I don't know if that's a lot, but compared to other stats, actually feels like not a bad thing. And as you can see, we got, this one gives 78 stun chance. Basically, it's like a solo end game gear. That's stun chance. Then you have stun chance on the Plate of Fear General. Then you also have stun chance on Etched Alabaster Band. Basically 3 items here that I see they have stun chance, which should make this build a bit easier to apply stun. So whenever you do this, like if the target is immune to stun, it's going to be shocked for 5.7 seconds instead, which works perfectly because this is either shocked or stunned targets. So even on bosses, I would assume that bosses are immune to stun, but they should still be shocked. I'm not quite sure what the shock does to the boss itself, but it does enable our extra bonuses here. So every successful heavy attack, that's the funny part here, sets the stun duration to 2.8 seconds and the shock duration to 6.7 seconds, which means that depending on your heavy attack chance, which my current one is not that high, so this is not going to work that well, but as you progress in the game and you increase your heavy attack chance as much as possible, this would be even more beneficial to you, because basically whenever you stun something, the fact that it's stunned is going to apply this effect, so you're going to have even higher chance of landing a heavy attack. But once you do the heavy attack, it's going to set the stun duration. So basically it's like resetting. It doesn't really make it so clear, but to me it sounds like it's just resetting the stun duration, which would continue to apply the bonus from the heavy attack. And why is this really good? It's not only that you can just kind of like reset that as much as possible, even if the skill is on cooldown, this should actually just continue to reset if you have a lot of heavy attacks, of course. But the other bonus is that heavy attacks are just more damage anyway. So you can stun lock a target and also do extra damage as much as possible if you have high enough heavy attack chance. So what do we use here? I still use Cruel Smite, still Shield Strike. Now Cross Cleaving is here as well. That's Dead Blow. We're gonna talk about that later. Cleaving Roar instead of Provoking Roar. Da Vinci as well. Wheel Breaker is here. That's the Stunning Blow. Guillotine Blade. Counter Barrier. Ice Tornado. Right now it's like on the side. It's not like super often you're gonna use it, but depending on the situation, if you have enough minions around you, pop this because it's gonna hit a lot of enemies. It says every enemy, so shouldn't have limit unless it's just basically on unit collision. So as many units as possible can fit around you. If they surround you, you're gonna hit as many as possible. And then you have Great Fury for damage boost. So we're going back to skill spec. So on Shield Strike, I use nothing here. So this is for multiple targets, but this is not super important for multiple targets, let's be honest. You're gonna use other skills for AoE. That's not the most important AoE skill. But I just put it here because it's low cooldown. You can just clear single minions if they're not many, and it's kind of a basic attack. You want to have something like that anyway. We don't care about the other things. Counter Barrier does have the damage boost, which is perfectly fine. The cooldown reduction of Shield Strike, again, we don't care about the aggro too much, so that's perfectly fine. I don't use Hook on this build. Don't care about pulling too much. Now, why do we change the Provoking to Cleaving Roar? Basically, Provoking Roar is just kind of like increasing the aggro. So the enemies attack you. That's fine, but you don't care about that too much in open world PvE. You just want to kill them as fast as possible. You don't care about tanking anyway. It's reducing their endurance by 310 to 6 enemies with 3 meter range. It's basically the same effect, the same other attributes of the effect. However, instead of provoking them, it's decreasing their endurance. Now, again, the wording is a bit funny. If you look at this one, the bottom part of the text, it says, has 100% chance to provoke against monsters and increase the effect duration 6.3 seconds. Now, this is basically supposed to be the same for this one. However, the wording is completely different. Here it says 6.3 seconds against monsters, which is basically the second part of this sentence, increase the effect duration 6.3 seconds. Okay, that's clear enough. But the other part here, it says always hits. So I assume this means that it has a 100% chance to provoke against monsters. That's what it is, just written in like very few words, but it's basically the same thing. So I'll pop this, you're going to decrease the endurance, and once you decrease their endurance, your heavy attack chance increases basically, because the lower endurance they have, the higher chance for you to land a heavy attack. And we talked about heavy attack, how important it is. However, the big question is, how much endurance do the monsters in open world actually have to begin with? So are you actually decreasing anything, or it's already at 0 and it cannot go negative anyway? So that's up to debate. I have no idea. If somebody has information on that, they can leave a comment or something. So I put this on. So we cannot really stack with this one, but it's not a big deal. It's not a huge problem. They're already 6.3 seconds anyway. We can, however, decrease the cooldown here, so that's fine. We didn't get points for this one. That's extra damage, but you know, that's not a huge thing for me anyway. Now the Bastion, we just changed to Great Fury for extra skill damage to the party members. Now you could spend a bit more points and make it Stalwart Eagle, which is going to improve the effectiveness, but just for you. But if you're in open world, again, you want to be in a team, so it's much more beneficial to give everybody 91 skill damage boost versus giving just yourself. It's gonna be, wait, let's just change it just to show you how much it's gonna, well, it's not gonna show me. So you're getting either 91 for everybody or 127 for you. So you do the math. It's way better to just give the bonus to everybody. Then we're not using anything from here. For the Greatsword, for Cruise Mites, use this one again for the triple attacks. Now this is even better because whenever it does critical hit or heavy attack, it's going to do extra damage on 3-meter radius around the target. And if you can manage to get your heavy and crit hit attack chance high enough, you can spam that very often because it's low cooldown and just do extra damage around the target. So that's like extra AoE. And then you have after skills used, damage increased by 5% for 2 seconds. I mean, it's very short time, but again, it's decent enough in this situation. So that's a little bit extra damage. Now for the stunning blow, what is it even more important in the rotation? Now it has skill cooldown decrease, but I don't want that because I want to combine 3 particular skills that have the same cooldown window, so I can just use them on a row in a combination all the time. And one of the skills doesn't have cooldown reduction. That's why it's no point to reduce some of the skills, but the others would stay on a different cooldown timer. So I don't need that in this build. This one is super important. When skills use, skill damage boost 150% for the next skill that is used within 5 seconds. Now that's perfect for a combination. One thing that's not exactly clear, I'm not quite sure, is it boosting it 250%, which means you get 50% bonus, or it's a boost of 150%, which means you get overall damage is going to be 1.5 extra, which means if you're doing 10k, it should be plus 150%. That means you're going to be doing 25k. But if it's 250%, that means you're going to do 15k. The skill description is really not exactly clear. I would assume that it's 250%, which means you get 50% bonus. Because the other one would be way too overpowered. I mean, Guillotine Blades already does, or this build already does more than 10k damage. So if this is 50%, that's 15k damage, which is decent enough. But if it's plus 150%, then that's ridiculously higher. So I don't believe that 3 points would give you that much of a boost. Keep that in mind. But that's great bonus anyway. It's just 3 points. It's pretty great for DPS. Aggro we don't need. So this is one thing. You would be thinking that this is a PvP skill, but then this is the only skill that actually has 5 specs here. And one of them is aggro increase. Now, you would never want to have aggro in PvP. It's useless. However, since that skill has it, that kind of lets you know that it is an option to be used in PvE because it does have that. So you could probably use that in some situations if you want to prioritize the skill a bit more. But it does have aggro, so that means it's not entirely just for PvP. It has its use in PvE, and this is why this is here. Unless that's some trick and they just put it randomly just like that, but I would say that this is huge for DPS boost. You have skill hit chance increased by 30%. Again, this now is more of a PvP stuff here. Like, you would not need that unless your hit chance is already low anyway. Then you have to change your build if your hit chance is low. That's not going to help you too much. This is probably to make sure that you actually stun targets in PvP. And that increases the stun duration. Again, you don't really care about stun duration. If you have high enough heavy attack chance, you're just going to reset the stun duration. Now, you may think, wait, this has 80% chance to stun the target. If I put this, Does that mean I'm gonna have a 100% chance? Again, based on the wording, it says skill hit chance, which means that it's just making sure that you will actually hit with this skill, which means you're gonna do 150% base damage. It doesn't say increase the stun chance. That's what I assume. So the stun chance remains 80%, regardless of where you're gonna put this. This only assures that you actually deliver the hit. And then once you have the hit done, then it would roll and say, hey, out of this 80% chance, you successfully stunned the target. But if you don't manage to hit, then obviously you won't apply any chance to stun the target anyway. So that's what I think it means. That's why I didn't put it anyway. Rely on the 80% chance here and your stun stat anyway. Then for the dead blow skill, what you see here, it's still dead blow. That's decent enough. And then you pop it to charge damage. Now it's even better. There are not many better things that you can put on. You can actually put something else that does stun as well, like Devastating Smash. But basically the cooldown of this one is way higher. The stun chance is way lower unless you upgrade that to the maximum as well. True, it does stun to all targets, which is great. And that's only to one target, so keep that in mind. This would work perfect in groups, but the chance to stun is very low. And then you'd increase the damage to everybody if you manage to stun. However, this is only for single target, but I will show you why this is actually not super bad if you can manage to run this properly. So we keep this one for extra single target. Skill cooldown decrease that. That's pretty low cooldown for damage skill. It's 9.4 seconds. That's pretty good. Then you have damage dealt to prone targets increased by 30%. I didn't really have any better options. I put this because in groups, there is a huge chance that others apply prone. So that's going to be extra damage anyway. Da Vinci only needs extra duration here. Cross cleaving, you pop this. Even if you don't get the Icebound bonus damage, which is about 130% extra damage, you're still going to do more damage with cross cleaving and actually double because it's going to reapply itself after 1 second. You still get the 15% attack speed bonus, and you got the crit hit chance increase as well, which, you know, delivering criticals also give you extra bonuses as well. Now the this is buffed to Ice Tornado. It's Devastating Tornado. We make Ice Tornado because it's going to decrease their movement speed, and also it's gonna bind the target for 2 seconds at 10 stacks, which with this one is a bit easier to apply than with Da Vinci's Courage, which you can apply it here. It really depends. Like if you just combine them together and after you already finish Ice Tornado, then you pop First Cleaving, but actually the rotation is much better. It feels more fluid if you pop Da Vinci's Courage with the other things. Then you pop Frost Cleaving and then you start popping Ice Tornado, because in the middle of the 12 attacks you're going to do, this is going to do double attacks, so that's a bit of a burst damage here. Otherwise, if you just want to proc the 10 stacks, you probably want to do Da Vinci Courage, Ice Tornado, and then Frost Cleaving, but at this point, you're already losing the burst there. So you'll be doing way less damage at first, and then in the end, you get extra damage from double Frost Cleaving, but technically, because you're in a group, most likely, the targets will be dead. So you're just slowing down yourself. You're not even going to actually see this proccing and having benefit on damaging. You want to probably push Da Vinci's Courage and Frost Cleaving and then Ice Tornado, even without the chill effect, and you don't want to care about the Icebound. That's a bit extra damage, but either way, like I said, I don't think you're gonna get to that point. That could change in the future if you get like way more difficult open world enemies, but for now, I don't think that's really necessary anyway. Wheel Breaker only gets AoE damage because you want to apply the weaken to as many enemies as possible around you, so that's decent. And Guillotine Blade goes to charge damage, which is obviously a lot damage, and AoE. So the AoE is a bit tricky here, but this also helps on crit hits and heavy attacks. Basically, that's why you want to have heavy attacks, and I'm going to talk about the combination. So the AoE of Guillotine Blade is not like other AoEs. It actually has condition to apply. If you critical hit or heavy attack, you're going to deal the base damage of Guillotine to a 3-meter radius around the target, and it's increased 120% against monsters, just like the regular one. So only whenever you do crit hit or heavy attack. Now, why you want to combine a couple of skills, I'll just show you something. So once you go here, the way I place my skills is also important for me, but I'll explain that later. Usually I would want to rotate, but the opening actually should be like buffing up. And as you can see, I have all these on shift plus something. Like this is really up to you. The way you'd rotate this could actually make a difference. Like basically you should pop Da Vinci's Courage because it has the longest duration, that's 12 seconds. Then you want to pop Great Fury because it has 9 seconds, and then you want to pop Cleaving Door. Once you do this, you can pop Cruise Might, so we increase your damage by 5% for 2 seconds, which is not much, but it's still something. Counter Barrier, which is going to increase your damage by 5% for the duration of Counter Barrier, which is 6 seconds. And then Wheel Breaker, which will reduce the defense of the enemies around you. Then Stunning Blow, which hopefully it would stun. And then because of the stun, it will increase your heavy attack chance. And then once you have higher heavy attack chance, and also this would increase it because you reduce their endurance. Then you pop Guillotine Blade. And what that would make sure that you would most likely be able to do a heavy attack on Guillotine Blade, which will proc AoE damage. And Guillotine Blade is doing massive damage, so you're probably going to be one-shotting multiple enemies around Guillotine Blade. It's not a huge range, but still, you're making sure that you can probably kill at least 3 enemies almost instantly with this combination, if everything procs properly, if your stats are high enough. So that's up to debate. And also, these skills are not the highest possible level, so that would help you even more. And then anywhere in between, you can obviously pop Ice Tornado, which is also great. You can just you can do it after Cleaving and Da Vinci, pop Ice Tornado. And again, we have Dead Blow, which is for single targets anyway, and you can pop Frost Cleaving somewhere in between. This is more like single target, but also could work on multiple targets because of Guillotine Blade, but it's just a bit of a procs that's going on. Otherwise, you could change a couple things, but really what I removed was a couple of specs. I changed Stunning Blow for Strategic Rush, which what is really going to do is only potentially lower the cooldown. If you completely change those things, you could probably do that. If you don't feel like playing the odds, you can just remove the Stunning Blow, replace it with Strategic Rush, remove the Cold Warrior and replace it with Moral Boost, and that would help you lower the cooldowns a bit. Not gonna rely on crit hits on stuns. It will be generally much more consistent, but you're not going to be able to do this kind of burst. If you have high heavy attack chance, then you could probably try this, and maybe you proc those effects more often and you do massive damage with heavy attacks. Okay, so let's test out the AoE build, the open world farm build. We're going to try to solo a little bit, and then we're also going to try to find a group as well. That was kind of like okay. I mean, it could have went a bit better. Okay, so let's check this out.